everybody, and welcome into Before the Sandstorm. I am Kendall Smith alongside of Wes Mitchell. And Wes, the header just gets better and better every single week for the Zoom link that I send you for Before the Sandstorm. I did it in all caps this week. I had the exclamation points. I had hashtag BeatUK, hashtag SEC Nation Who, because yesterday I was out at the Paul Feinbaum show and First Take with Tim Tebow. And I sent you a text, and I was like, I think the real pregame show that everyone needs to be excited about here in this town is Before the Sandstorm.
Yes, we should have actually commandeered a spot on the Horseshoe, locked it in, and sent out a press release for everybody to come out and see us this morning. But pretty cool that's on campus. I know that adds a little extra added excitement. And who knows, maybe one day the Gamecocks will get game day over there again too.
You know what? That is my dream. When I came to college here, I was like, college game day just has to come one singular time during my college career at South Carolina. The time is waning. I only have a year after this one, so hopefully the Beamer era brings college game day with it while I'm still at school. But Wes, big game today for the South Carolina Gamecocks, taking on the Kentucky Wildcats back at home at 7 p.m. in Williams-Brice Stadium. And some people are like, this is the biggest game of the year. Like, this is our Super Bowl. This is huge for the future of the program. It's huge for what's at stake in the rest of the season. And then you have other people who are like, it's just another game, treat it as such. So for you, how big is the game tonight for the Gamecocks?
You know, I hate the phrase must win, so I'm going to avoid must win because when you start hyping something up into a must win and then you lose, it's like, well, what about the rest of the season? You know, like what now? What next? So, you know, I think there's also a difference between approach and reality. The approach from a coaching staff is going to be, hey, let's treat every game the same. Let's not make it too much. Let's not make it more than what it is. Let's go execute. But the reality is this is really the first swing game of the season. If you look at the first three games, most people, even if we didn't know how South Carolina would get there, most people would say 2-1 with 2 early wins and then a loss to Georgia. That's the on-paper result. That was the reality result. Well, this week you kind of come into a game, you know, Vegas agrees it's a much smaller line. It's a situation where it's a winnable game. It's at home. South Carolina's going to have all these recruits on campus, which we're going to talk about a little bit later on. So to me, it's one of those games. If you lose, it's not the end of the world because it's game 4 of the Beamer era. But if you could win, if you could find a way to win it at home, the momentum that it would create, you know, going into next week and just 3-1 looks and feels, and the perception of that is so much better than the numbers 2-2. So to me, a win for South Carolina tonight would just do wonders for sort of continuing some momentum.
You talk about it being a big game, and I think if it is a loss tonight and South Carolina does go to 2-2, we'll see a lot of those tweets, the mix in a water type of tweet, as Mike Yuba would say, where people are just going absolutely crazy. I do think the optics of a 3-1 record would obviously be much better for South Carolina. But you mentioned there the recruits that are coming to tonight's game. Not only a win needs to happen on the field, but also off of the field with all of these recruits coming to Williams-Brice. So tell us some of those big names that'll be in the house this evening.
Yeah, you know, this is an opportunity for South Carolina to they really like pinpointed this weekend and said, hey, we're going to try to get as many top guys in as possible. Coming from right down the road, Dutch Fork High School, they've won like 100 straight state championships, it feels like. You've got Antonio Williams. He's a 4-star wide receiver. He's one of 3 guys that are on their actual official visits this weekend. So you have dozens, maybe almost 100 kids will be here on unofficial visits. But as far as spending the entire weekend at South Carolina, getting like that complete look at the entire program, top to bottom, you have Williams, you have Jayshon Barham, a kid that's coming down from Baltimore that South Carolina's in on, a 4-star kid as well. And then you have a defensive tackle from Vieira, Florida, Jamari Lyons, who high 3-star guy, not quite as highly rated according to Rivals as the other 2 guys, but is a huge target for South Carolina as well. They had him in June. He had a good time. They're really battling Florida, the in-state school there for him right now. So that's 3 guys that South Carolina wants, they prioritize, they need. So this will be a big weekend for them anyway, but then add in the fact that you have these dozens of unofficial visitors, some that are committed. You have a lot of juniors and sophomores. Really, this is when you set this sort of – you set the stage for you to be a big factor with the younger kids. So if they have a good time now, when they start setting, those final 5, final 3, my top 2, this is when you set the stage to get them back on campus as they get older and as they sort of look into making a decision. And I'll tell you, Kendall, the quarterback position, wow, the guys that are going to be on campus right now, as far as that position goes, you look at Dylan Lonergan, a kid out of Georgia that's a top 10 quarterback in the country. From right down the road, you have Jaden Bradford from Chapin. A little bit further down the road in Fort Mill, you have Jaden Davis. These are top priority targets for South Carolina at that position, and quarterbacks commit much earlier than any other spot. So it's absolutely huge for South Carolina. You don't have to win the game necessarily, but you need to show progress. You need to show a great atmosphere, and you need for these kids and their families to be leaving sort of buzzing about their experience at South Carolina.
Coach Beamer has mentioned that great atmosphere all week long. He's harped on it. He looked into the camera during his Tuesday weekly press conference, and he was like, I need you to show out at Williams-Brice Stadium this weekend. So certainly a lot of reliance on the fan base to also bring the hype and get these recruits excited about South Carolina. But back to Kentucky West, they won last weekend over Chattanooga 28-23. It was kind of a tight game, a little touch and go there a bit for Kentucky. So what are the weak points, do you think, of the Wildcats that South Carolina can capitalize off of this weekend?
Yeah, it's a great question. This is a Kentucky team that I think has made a lot of progress in really the offseason. They've got a quarterback transfer, and Will Levis has been really good. Wandale Robinson at receiver has been really, really good. But to me, they look like an offense that is sort of still figuring themselves out. They have a new offensive coordinator, so they've been very explosive at times, which concerns you from a South Carolina perspective. But then, like we saw last week, they can sort of bog down, become mistake-prone. At times they've run the football really well. At times they've struggled in that department. So if you're South Carolina, I think, one, you have to take advantage of any opportunities they have where they put the ball in danger, because this is a Kentucky offense that has turned the ball over a little bit. So you have to be opportunistic as far as those things go. And then, this is South Carolina offensive line, let's be honest, has not played to the standard that we probably expected or put on them coming in, or the standard they put on themselves. So I think you look, Kentucky has not been a great pass rush team defensively. South Carolina has not been a great pass protection team offensively. So which of those two things, who improves, who sort of who took this last week and sort of bared down on some issues and tried to fix them the best, I think will be something to see if South Carolina can take advantage of that as far as Kentucky goes.
Speaking of the South Carolina offensive line, a lot of issues there over the past couple of weeks. Coach Beamer has put the blame on the coaches. He's put it on the entire offense as a whole. But last week at Georgia, just 2.8 yards per carry. So what is this issue boiling down to, Wes? Do you really think it's the coaching? Do you think it's the whole offense? Or is it really that offensive line?
Yeah, I think any time in football, the blame goes around. Like generally, if you're having a mistake, it's like it might be 15% on this, 20% on this, 25% on that, and there's some portion of blame to go around to everybody. But you have to figure out if you're the coaches, what is fixable, what just is what it is, and if it is fixable, what can you then do to fix it? So I think for South Carolina, it's kind of about finding something. To throw a cliche in there that you can hang your hat on. What do you do well as an offense? And then can you build off of that? I think with a new offensive coordinator, new offensive system, to me, they look like an offense that's just not quite comfortable yet, not quite consistently knowing exactly where they're supposed to be. It's one thing to be able to, if somebody asks you, hey, what are you supposed to do on this play? It's one thing to be able to answer that. It's another to be able to do it like that with guys rushing past you in the heat of battle against really good opponents. So to me, I think South Carolina is going to have to just continue to get comfortable, because right now there's just a lot of mental errors, I think, across the board on offense. So to me, maybe you simplify a little bit, find out what you do well. Then once you lock in on that, as the season goes on, you can maybe expand out and do some more things. But right now, it's about identifying you do very well, sticking to it. Interestingly enough, even losing to Kentucky last year, that was a blowout on Kentucky's side. South Carolina ran the football very well against Kentucky last year. Kevin Harris, I think, went over 200 yards. The year before, South Carolina beat Kentucky at Williams-Brice Stadium, 2019. That really wasn't a great South Carolina football team, but they found a way to run the football against Kentucky in that game as well. So is there maybe a glimmer of hope there for South Carolina? Absolutely. These running backs have not forgotten how to play ball either. So if you're a fan sitting there at the end of the first quarter, you're probably going to start to have a pretty good idea already, though. If South Carolina started to find those chunks of yardage on the ground like we were used to seeing last year, then you can probably start to feel a little bit better about this football game.
And Wes, it's funny that 2019 game was also a night game as well. I remember it was on Parents Weekend too, so maybe recreating a little bit of that magic. The parents are back this weekend at South Carolina for Family Weekend. It's a night game once again, so very, very similar to that 2019 game. But earlier this week, actually, you talked about the offense there, and the new offensive coordinator, Marcus Satterfield, he said in his press conference that he didn't want this offense to be reactionary and that this week they weren't really going to do anything differently. And I thought that was an interesting comment. So talk about that a little bit and what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think, first of all, I credit this coaching staff quite a bit for being willing to say, I should have done this differently. We heard Beamer talking about the decision at the end of the first half at Georgia, say I should have done that differently. We've heard Marcus Satterfield say I should have got Juju McDowell the football more, and that's my fault. I, for one, appreciate when coaches admit they're human as opposed to just pretending that coaches are infallible and can't make mistakes. So wanted to say that first. I appreciate that from this coaching staff. And two, I think when Satterfield says that, he's probably more talking from a big picture standpoint as far as like from their perspective, we're not going to take the offense and just chunk the whole thing in the trash and start over because things have not gone well. Because really nobody benefits from that. If you panic, press the panic button, start over, they're all screwed. So I think you look and if you're South Carolina, you're saying, what can we take out of what we've done and find the positives and maybe cut down what we're doing and do, like I said earlier, those things that we feel most comfortable with. So to me, do you maybe go back and look at some things last year even as well that South Carolina did really well? Potentially, yes, I think so. So I think Satterfield's point isn't that they're not going to change anything. Obviously, you're going to have to tweak some things. But from a big picture standpoint, you're not going to just say we have to throw everything out and start over because then everybody's probably going to be even more confused than they are now.
And Luke Doty back in that starting position this week at quarterback. How much of a difference maker is Luke for this Gamecock team?
I thought Luke, all things considered, played outstanding in Athens. He was put in a tough situation, not a lot of practice coming in. Luke looks like a gamer to me. So I think you add that extra dynamic with the running game with his legs. And, most defenses are not going to be as fast as Georgia's. So Kentucky has a really good defense, but they're not going to just be like sideline to sideline as fast as Georgia. I think that opens up opportunities for Doty to run the football, to add an extra dynamic. I think against most normal defenses, his speed will sort of play up. You saw there were a couple of different runs where Georgia's guys got to Doty, but he was maybe one half step away from breaking, around the edge. So I look at this game. To me, South Carolina is going to need Luke Doty to play very well if they're going to win tonight.
So you're saying that Kentucky's defense doesn't have like 100 5-star players and a 340-pound lineman who runs faster than anybody on this call?
Exactly.
That was a classic, the Shane Beamer quote that went viral this week from Ben Portnoy at the State. But Wes, before we get out of here, your game prediction for tonight's game against Kentucky.
And I'm just, I was a little bit, Beamer, I guess, doesn't think anybody on the Zoom call is very fast.
I know.
Apparently.
I was like, I'm on the Zoom call, and I would like for you to put me in a foot race. No, I'm just kidding.
And you're a former skater as well.
Yes,
I have learned
ice skating. Competitive figure skater. So I would like to say I'm a little bit athletic, but I'm not sure I would want to get in a foot race with any college football player.
You would probably beat them all on ice, though. I feel very confident about that.
Exactly. He said, I think he said he runs faster. But if he just said he is faster in general, I could have tweaked those words a little bit and been like, well, maybe not on skates. But
Yeah, on ice, I think you got them. But you know what, Kendall, this game, I have gone back and forth so many times. The people saying that, I think it's like South Carolina as a fan base, y'all have got to get it out of your head that South Carolina's going to just show up and beat Kentucky, because right now that's not the case anymore. Kentucky has earned the ability to say they've won 6 of 7. Like they have owned this thing lately. So I think this is not a show up and win game. People assume South Carolina just automatically has more talent than Kentucky. I don't think that's true necessarily either. I look at this game, and I will say the same thing, Shane Beamer. There's a reason Shane Beamer looked right in the camera and talked to Gamecock Nation and said that he needs y'all there. South Carolina's fans have to affect this football game. If this is a game where Kentucky's able to take you guys out of it beforehand, then South Carolina's probably going to lose the game. Like I think this has to be a game, much like Georgia's crowd affected South Carolina's offense. South Carolina's crowd has to affect Kentucky's offense, create some turnovers. Maybe you find a little special team advantage there. Got to be honest, I don't feel great about this pick, but I'm going to say Gamecocks win. I'm going to say 24-21 in a fourth quarter dub for the Gamecocks, because the defense creates 3 turnovers.
Wow, that is very specific, and I can already tell that if that were to happen, my blood pressure would just be like rising slowly until it like got to peak level. If it's a fourth quarter showdown and it's that close, my heart rate and my blood pressure will be up immensely. But Wes, you should have been on the Paul Feinbaum show yesterday. What were they doing? You could have filled some time, because that was great insight right there.
Yeah, I should have been. They did not invite Sauls instead of us, Kendall, on a regular basis. So maybe one day we'll get the SEC Nation invite, huh?
Yeah, since we have Michael Sauls on staff, I think we have a little connection. So maybe we'll be on the Paul Feinbaum show one day. But until then, this is the only pregame show that you need, Gamecock fans. Before the Sandstorm, be sure to follow us on all social media platforms. Check out our TikTok at Gamecock Central. We'll be keeping you updated all day long for this Kentucky-South Carolina showdown at 7 p.m. in Williams-Brice Stadium. But once again, Wes, thank you for joining me on Before the Sandstorm. It's fun as always.